Okay, we are starting the last and final section of this little story about building the railroad through the Pennsylvania area. This is the epilogue. And perhaps surprisingly to you, the epilogue deals with the state of local industry. It's a story of local industry at the time when the Pennsylvania Railroad was built. And what I want to put in here is a little bit of explanation about why this epilogue deals with local industry. This whole story that we were talking about has had to do with my attempts to learn about local industry. I first of all started to study how industry developed during the period after the railroad had already arrived here. And it very much impressed me that all this stuff that was happening as far as industrial development would never have taken place if the railroad had not arrived. So, after I was done with that project, I started another project, another book, which was about building the Pennsylvania Railroad through this area. And what we've been dealing with in this little series is from that book. And then from that, I decided to do a project, another book on the state of local industry prior to the railroad, which was pretty much a cottage industry kind of thing. And the whole result of it was the understanding of how much the railroad really contributed to this area of Greensburg and Hempfield Township. So what follows will be just a short look at local industry at the time when the railroad was building. We are looking now at the oldest manufactory in Greensburg. It was by 1851, actually much before that, a blacksmith shop. It had been Christian Pershing's place in the late 1700s. He made wool coverlets there. He was a weaver. He also made gunpowder there. And the Potts family eventually got it. And when it came into their hands in 1851, the place had a steam engine in it. A steam engine and 3 forges. The blacksmith shops were actually the beginnings of machine shops. This is just a little look at blacksmith's tools. And it's really hard for us to understand just how important blacksmiths were in a certain society. The blacksmith shops were not just places where things were made. They were places where the guys in town hung out and exchanged news. George Dallas Albert's father was a blacksmith in Youngstown, and he was also a county commissioner. You can see that the blacksmiths did have a good amount of local prominence. Right up the street from the Potts blacksmith shop, we're on Otterman Street, was the Coons Tannery. This is Otterman Street here. This little street is an alley now that is called Union Street or Alley. The Coons had this large stone building where they converted animal hides into leather. They lived above the tannery right here. Down here lived the Weldies. The Weldies and the Coons became very prominent people in the town. Around 1850, Greensburg had become what we might call a wagon town. Traffic going back and forth through town had caused the local blacksmiths to become very good wagon fixers and eventually builders. By the year 1850, the largest number of tradesmen in town were involved in the building of wagons and carriages. So they weren't just fixing them, they were building them. This gives us a look over at Otterman Street. And over here is a wagon builder named Fess. this is now College Avenue. This right here is the Cook's place. They ran a tavern there. Number 4 is a place where John Blank had a blacksmith shop. Number 5 is John Blank's carriage shop. And Sloan actually did his blacksmithing down here. Up here was the Stark residence, and behind the Stark residence was the place where they made carriages. Adam Stark and his son Caleb had the biggest place in town where carriages were made. This is an ad for their place. This is what a carriage shop would look like. Right up over the hill on Otterman Street was the factory place where William Hunter made chairs. It was almost across the street from where Toad's is right now. This little house sat where Mr. Toad's is now located. This shows the western part of town. This would have been Dutchtown. And over here you can see the Coons Tannery. Down here is the Potts Blacksmith Shop. Here was a weaver named Fess. Turney's were tinsmiths. Here lived Senator Cowan and his son Frank. Here was the Coons Tannery. Over here you can see things like the carriage factory of the Starks. And here was another Stark down here, Gottlieb Stark on Pittsburgh Street. He had a wagon factory. And I see it is time for us to close down this operation, and we'll have to say so long for now.